Ileana is up early with LoveBabz, LoveTalk on Babz Rolls Live. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for getting up early to do this.
Oh my God, it is early. I mean, I could wake up at 7, but you expect me to actually speak and be coherent at 7? That is a
You
good
look
one.
radiant, Ileana. You look radiant.
Thank you so much. So do you. And glamorous too.
Oh,
Love your glasses.
thank you. Thank you. All right, so I got your book.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love it. Thank you.
I'm fascinated by the National Alliance of Black Feminists, A History, because this just takes me into the 70s, like when Black feminism was just on everybody's lips and in everybody's brains, and having these deep conversations about where Black women are centered in the feminist conversation, and does that put us at odds with the Black community, with Black men? Like what? So talk to me about why you have this, why you wrote this book and the history of this.
Oh, for many, 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 many reasons. I like how you said that in the 70s, Black women were at the center of the conversation about feminism. And that is entirely true. That has been documented now by a variety of histories. But when I started writing this book, and when I was first studying the history of of the American women's liberation movement, that was in the, I can't believe it's been so many years, but in, let's say, 2000 in the 2000s, so almost 20 years ago, that history was not presented like this. The history of the women's liberation movement was predominantly a history of this is what white women did, this is what how the movement evolved, these are the various trends within feminism. I think in 2005, Benita Roth came up with a book that that organized the history of the movement along racial ethnic lines, and she was saying that there were Black feminists, that there were Latina feminists, and that Latinx feminists, and that there were also Native feminists, and these were groups that very much existed. But in many ways, that history seemed sort of like there's this wide women's liberation movement, and women of color feminists are there, but in sort of like small groups that only last for a few years. They're totally isolated, and so on and so forth. So that was the first step. Then Kimberly Springer came out and she wrote an amazing book, Living for the Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
That is a history of Black feminism in the 1970s, and that does the mapping of Black feminism throughout the country. I build a lot on her work. And then, and this was the landscape in which I was thinking about writing the history of the National Alliance of Black Feminists. And over time, I discovered that, as you said, in the 70s, Black women were at the center. They were not marginal. They were not small groups. A lot of them did not have a lot of resources.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about that in the book about why they didn't have a lot of resources, why they had a lot fewer resources than white feminists. And they were connected. They were trying to meet at national conferences. So there was this whole vibrant other Black women's liberation movement, and that was nationwide and was coherent and included a lot of groups with a lot of political outlooks, from socialists and anti-colonial to more I don't want to use the word liberal, I use the word humanist, in my in the book to discuss a feminism that's very much concerned with poverty, but not from a Marxist framework. So there
So let
were
me tell people
also
who you are
catalysts.
first before, because I didn't get the chance to tell people you are an assistant teaching professor in the Department of Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies at Rutgers University. So you're an academic.
Yes, I am an academic, and I am also now I am associate teaching professor. I got promoted this week,
Yay!
so thank you. Yes, absolutely, and thank you.
Well,
Yes,
I wanted to put your credentials out there because I want people to understand that you're not just didn't just walk in off the street and say, "Oh, this is what I know about the history of feminism." Like you are an academic and you have spent a great deal of time researching and understanding and comparing and looking at the history of Black women, the National Alliance of Black Feminists.
and when you're saying a long time, you can say that again because I spent 15 years working on this book. So I'm I am so I'm half embarrassed to actually say that, but I want to be grateful for the time that
But it takes a long time to do this kind of research, though, right?
I think it does. I think if you want to do it right, I think it does. And I think somebody told me that Professor Ulla Taylor, she told me that it sometimes books can have a longer shelf life if you spend more time writing them. And I do appreciate the clarity and the way my thinking evolved over time. Not all of this was sort of intended because I was for a time I was working part-time. I didn't have a lot of resources. I didn't have a lot of time for research and so on and so forth. But in many ways, like I'm very, very grateful with that I had the time to do this, and I'm pleased, very happy with the final product. So I
So
sound
what did you
smart on
learn?
I somehow sound smart on the page.
What did you learn, Ileana? I'm pronouncing your name right, Ileana?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
And how do you pronounce your last name?
Nachescu.
Nachescu. Okay. Well, so what did you learn? And what did you know going in first? And then as you were going through this process of researching and excavating information, what did you learn?
Oh, so many things. Thank you for asking this because I appreciate your question about process. As I said, when I was going in, I was interested initially in consciousness raising groups. Now, I was an international graduate student at the time, coming from Romania, a post socialist country. And I
Mm-hmm.
was intrigued by the fact that feminists were saying the personal is political. I was like, why would anybody want politics in their personal lives? Shouldn't we keep politics someplace, like in public where we can, like present ourselves, speak properly, and so on and so forth, and at home, let home be home. But at the same time, this was very much an Eastern European experience. But at the same time, like I was also learning it was also my own consciousness raising that was happening in the process. But I was reading the primary sources, and the primary sources from the 1970s were referencing various groups, Black women's groups here and there. And I was like, well, they were there. Why are they not more? Why doesn't history center them? Why isn't history told from their perspective? And this is when, and to this day, I remember when I first saw, because I was so excited. I had access to interlibrary loan, and I was so excited because I could like bring any kind of book that I wanted, and any kind of the resources, like sometimes even documents from archives would be available. And I requested that, and I requested a paper written by Brenda Eichelberger, the executive director of the National Alliance of Black Feminists. And that paper was called Consciousness Raising for Black Women and Men. And at that point, I was like, oh my God, this is so fascinating because consciousness raising groups always were about women. They were always, like, we're going to meet in a group of women, men can't come to our groups for these reasons, and there were a variety of reasons. I'm like, yes, okay, very interesting. I had done organizing in Romania, and we never thought about feminism as something that would not include men.
Hmm.
Oh, we were always like, yes, of course, we need men. Number one, for many, many reasons. We need, they were our families. They are sometimes they can be, we can't imagine a world without men. We don't, like, why would we do that? And they needed to be part of the revolutionary transformation that we are trying to create. And just as a quick aside, right now there's a feminist movement that's happening in Romania with, I don't know, 30,000 people going to marches against violence against women, and one fourth of them are men.
Okay.
I am so impressed. I'm like, because I went to a march in the summer, and there was another one in October. And men are very much, and that's how it should be, right? So I read this. My mind is blown. I have a little chapter about this in my dissertation, and that was all I could do because I was an international student and it was limited funding. I didn't have a lot of funding, so I had to finish my PhD. So I did finish my PhD, and then received a fellowship at Rice University. And I had to postpone this, in a way, for a long time. And then I end up in the Midwest at some point, as I'm teaching. I was teaching at Grand Valley State University, which was a school in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the first thing I'm like, okay, here's Chicago, not that far. I can go to the archives. And then I start doing this really, really seriously. I discovered an archive that's 25 books, 25 boxes, I'm so sorry, 25 boxes, large boxes of documents. And my mind is blown. I'm like, how much did these women do? And how big was their organization? It was not big. It was, in many ways, this was the efforts of a handful of people, led by Brenda Eichelberger, who was the engine of this tremendous energy. I got to meet her. She passed in 2017. I met her in person, and I feel tremendously privileged for having had that opportunity. How much people loved her, how much people admired her, how sort of developed her feminist thinking was, right? How ramified and complex. She had a black feminist position and understanding of pretty much everything, and how much she wrote. She wrote a lot of articles. They never managed to produce a book,
Hmm.
although they wanted to. And yeah, so at that point, I started reading and going back to the archives and trying to draft the chapters of a book. And it took me a long time also because I didn't know how to write a book. And I had to learn to do that too.
So, Ileana, how does a white Romanian woman come to Black feminism the way that you have? Because you seem very excited about this. Like you seem very genuinely interested, and an admirer of this work.
Well, I mean, how not? Why wouldn't somebody? I don't. But in a way, it just felt so much more real and so much more complex and so much more able to address the complexity of everybody's lives, because we all have more than one identity. It is very unfortunate. White feminists toward the end of the 1970s were talking about gender. They were colorblind. They were promoting colorblind feminism. They were like, gender is the main axis of oppression, and everything comes from that. And I was just, no, and I was somehow also clarifying my own political outlook and I would never, ever not imagine a form of feminism that does not come deeply from the cultures in which women live, from the lived experiences, from their feelings, from their communities, from their connections. And it's a feminism not against, it's a feminism with everybody. Brenda Eichelberger said, pro-black women, but anti-no one, right? So yes, put women in the all variety of their cultures, in all variety of their experiences, which are not always good, which are not always white centered, which are not always, maybe not always immediately about gender, although gender does play a role in them, right? And create a form of feminism that's more comprehensive. So
So
that
have you had conversations with Black feminists? And is the alliance still, the National Alliance still up and running, or is it in the archives?
both.
Okay.
Um, yes, yeah. So I'm very honored because I had the opportunity to work together with the former activists, and they gave me interviews. And because unfortunately the process of writing this book took so long, but fortunately, on the other hand, I had the opportunity over time to have extended conversations and go back and ask them more and more questions, like clarify this, clarify that. They saw, so this was written together with the former activists. And then that does not mean, of course, that my voice, my critical voice, is not very much present there. But this was written together with former activists, with Brenda Eichelberger, with Dr. Gail Porter, with Beryl Fitzpatrick, with Helen Wiggum, and a lot of other activists. Some of them have passed away, and that was written with them over many conversations with them. I had the wonderful opportunity to get to know them and to follow their lives. And honestly, they're my mentors in many ways. Having the opportunity to talk to these feminists, these women, because a lot of them are still active, gave
Hmm.
sort of blueprints. You come to this country and you don't have, I don't know necessarily, you don't have elders, and you don't have a model, and you don't have really a trajectory that that you can follow in your life. But now I know very much how I want my life to look like if I ever make it to 80, because these are the black feminists that are my role models. And I'm like, yes, I want to do what you're doing. So, yeah. So back to the National Alliance of Black Feminists, I, I, they and the organization ended in 1983. That's the point where I say that it was kind of on the decline. They were confronted with a variety of problems. The country was turning towards conservatism. The rents in the Chicago downtown were going up because that's where they had the Black Women's Center. Isn't that amazing that they had a Black Women's Center right up there in a skyscraper in a huge building in downtown Chicago that was also rapidly gentrifying, but where Black women could go, just walk in the door and go and have a space that was welcoming to them, where they could hang out, they could talk politics, where they could relax. They had the job board. They had a lot of like things that were happening there. It was also a very deeply cultural space. This is also what I appreciate about Black feminism, because they were always interested in culture. They were like, oh, and this is what they say in the Black Women's Bill of Rights. The right to cultural representation. We're going to be producers of culture. We're going to be consumers of culture. They had all sorts of projects in which they wanted to feature Black women, Black feminist artists, and Black feminist poetry. They had a lot. They had a lot of events centered on that. So I really loved that part too. So where was I?
No, you're great. So we got about five minutes left.
Oh no.
I
Okay.
know
Thank you.
we up
Thank you.
early,
I
but
appreciate it.
I want to ask you, where is Black feminism in your opinion? Where is it today? Like, what do you see threads of it still? Do you, are there pockets of Black feminists talking about the things that were talked about in the 70s?
I think so, very much so. I think Black feminism is still at the forefront of Black feminist organizing in academia, women of color feminism, more generally. Black women are very much at the forefront of everything that is happening. One of my department colleagues, Dr. Brittany Cooper, she's very, very well known. In general, I love looking at and seeing what Black feminists constantly do. They are in many ways very active, very visible, and fortunately this time they have a little bit more power, and they kind of tend to set the tone of many conversations that are happening, and that is a very, very good thing. And in many ways, I constantly follow them. I try to stay abreast. Of course, many issues that were not discussed in the 1970s, such as the coloniality of gender, are not how binary gender is imposed on colonized populations. That is not. These were not things that were necessarily discussed in the 1970s, although some fragments of that were happening. But yes, there are so many things. Black women health activism. I'm going to talk about that. I want to mention Dr. Gail Porter, and
Mm-hmm.
who wrote Primetime. She wrote, you know how nowadays we're talking about menopause and middle-aged women all of a sudden, and people have discovered it, and of course, and they're talking about white women. Dr. Gail Porter was writing about Black women's midlife in prime time in, I think, 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So I warmly recommend that book. Her work is fantastic. Her work is phenomenal. Ms. Beryl Fitzpatrick, who is still working as the CFO of Community Health Net in Gary, Indiana, she is now very active in the environmental struggle against racism, because she due to the pollution created by U.S. steel, which is not incidentally one of the economic engines of Gary, Indiana, but at the same time, its largest polluter, right? Because of that, she's active in environmental activism against U.S. steel. So I think, these fantastic, wonderful people are still part of the conversation, but fortunately, we also have, younger generations who are pushing Black feminism forward and leading women of color feminism and leading us all, and that's a very, very good thing.
Well, here's your book, The National Alliance of Black Feminists, A History by Ileana Nachescu. Did I say that right?
Yes, perfect.
And
Thank
it's out now. Is it out now? It's
It
out
is
now.
out now. It's available in paperback. It's available on, and I think if you purchase it from the University of Illinois Press website, they might offer the, or either, like a coupon or something like that. They have periodically, they have sales, and I think that's going to be available for sale. That's it's a better way to purchase it, I'm saying, than perhaps Amazon, but they offer sales and coupons and things like that.
Well, as the back of the book says, this is an in-depth study of an overlooked organization. The National Alliance of Black Feminists tells an untold story of Black women's liberation in the Midwest. Thank you. And the cover is gorgeous. So
My
thank you.
Thank you so much. Just I want to mention that Tierney Malone, visual artist Tierney Malone, created that cover based on visual elements from the National Alliance of Black Feminist documents. So the lettering, the design of the two hands breaking free from racism and sexism. These are all in the documents created, the visual elements in the documents created by the National Alliance of Black Feminists. And one last thought that I want to mention to everybody: let's all remember that feminism is a dimension of humanism. That feminism is for all, and it always includes race and gender and many other things. And the National Alliance of Black Feminists taught us that lesson.
Thank you so much for being my guest this morning. Thank you for getting up early. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's
All
so
right.
good.
This is the great book. I'm enjoying it. Feel free to log out because we're going to log out. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, I appreciate you. All right. Thank you, Harry.